Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elvis. I'm going to talk a little bit about the La Florida del Inca. Okay, La Florida del Inca is a book written by Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, a Peruvian mestizo born in Cusco in 1539. The work was published in 1605 and is a historical chronicle that recounts the facts and events that occurred in the conquest and colonization of Florida in what is now the United States by Spaniards. The book is divided in two parts. The first part focuses on the expedition of Pánfilo de Narváez, who led an expedition of exploration to Florida in 1527. Narváez and his team of conquistadors faced numerous obstacles, including adverse weather, Native American attacks, and lack of resources. Most of the group died, including Narváez himself. The second part of the book deals with the expedition of Hernando de Soto, who in 1539 led an expedition to conquer Florida on behalf of the Spanish crown. De Soto and his group faced similar problems to Narváez, but eventually managed to establish a Spanish colony in Florida. The book recounts the tensions between the Spanish and Native Americans, as well as the power struggle between the Spanish themselves. Overall, La Florida del Inca is valuable work for understanding the early history of the exploration and colonization of America by Europeans, as well as for understanding the complexity or relationship between indigenous cultures and Spanish conquistadors. The work is a historical chronicle that combines details, narrative with reflection of the meaning of historical events. La Florida del Inca is a work of great importance for Latin American literature and the history of the Spanish conquest of America. Written by Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, son of an Inca princess and a Spanish conquistador. The work is a historical chronicle that recounts the events of the conquest and colonization of Florida, a region of the southeast coast of the United States. The work is divided in two parts. The first focuses on the expedition of Pánfilo Narváez, who left Cuba in 1527 to explore the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, and then continue north to find the source of the wealth that the Spanish believed was found on the continent. The expedition faced many dangers, including storms, disease, famine, attacks from Native Americans. Eventually, only 4 men survived and were taken prisoner by the Native Americans. The second part of the book deals with the expedition of Hernando de Soto, who arrived in Florida in 1539 with a large contingent of soldiers and settlers. De Soto set out to conquer and colonize Florida, seeking wealth and land for Spain. The expedition also faced many dangers, such as disease, Native American attacks, and lack of resources. Despite this, they managed to establish a colony in Florida and explore much of the current territory of the United States. La Florida del Inca is a work of great historical and literary value. Garcilaso de la Vega combines detailed narration events with broader reflection on the nature and conquest and colonization. The relationship between Europeans and Native Americans and the implication of the conquest for both groups. In addition, the work is a sample of the cultural miscegenation that occurred during the time of the Spanish conquest. Since Garcilaso de la Vega writes from the perspective of someone who has roots in both Inca culture and Spanish culture. Okay, next. What's next? We are going to do a little interview to Pamphilo Narvaez. Okay, Pamphilo Narvaez. Good morning, Mr. Narvaez. Thank you for granting us this interview. Okay, we're going to start with, could you please tell us a little about your expedition to Florida in 1527? Okay. Okay, good day. Of course, my expedition aimed to explore the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, then continue north to find the source of wealth that Spanish believed was found on the continent. We left Cuba with a fleet of 5 ships and about 600 men, including soldiers, colonists, and slaves. Okay, that sounds great. Okay, Mr. Narvaez, what happened during the expedition? During the expedition, we faced many dangers along the way. Storms were a constant problem, and we lost some boats. In addition, many of our men became ill and died from the diseases we encountered along the way. There were also clashes with the Native Americans who were not willing to let us pass. Oh, sounds great. Okay, Mr. Narvaez, how would you describe your encounter with Native Americans? Oh, okay. It was too difficult. In some parts of the way, the natives offered us help and welcomed us peacefully, but in other places, we faced resistance and violent attacks. I think the main difficulty was the language barrier and cultural difference. We didn't understand their customs and they didn't understand ours. Oh, that sounds so bad. Okay, Mr. Pamphilo de Narvaez, what happened at the end of the expedition? Unfortunately, most of our expedition failed, and only a few men survived. I was captured by Native Americans and held prisoner for several years before managing to escape and return to Mexico. The expedition was a great tragedy, and we could not find the well we were looking for. Okay, that sounds so bad. Okay, Mr. Pamphilo, what lessons did you learn from your expedition to Florida? I learned that conquest and colonization are not as easy as we thought. It's important to understand the culture and custom of the peoples we intend to conquer and respect way of life. I also learned that the nature can be very dangerous and that we need to be prepared to face any difficulty. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Narvaez, for sharing your story with us. It has been a pleasure to talk with you. Okay. Thank you. It was a pleasure to share my experience. Okay. Another question. Don't go. Another question. Could you tell us a little more about the capture and the time you spent in prison? Oh, I was captured by the Native American after my expedition failed. I was a prisoner for several years and went through many hardships. At first, I was treated with respect by Native Americans, but then I was transferred to different tribes and was mistreated and tortured on several occasions. Finally, I managed to escape and return to civilization. Oh my God, I didn't want to hear that. Okay, how was your relationship with the other leaders of expedition, such as Álvaro Núñez, Cabeza de Vaca? My relationship with Cabeza de Vaca was strained. He was my second in command, but we had differences as to how we should proceed and expedition. There were also disagreements as to how we should deal with Native Americans. Overall, I believe that our lack of unity and lack of clear leadership were a major factor in the failure of the expedition. Okay, Mr. Narvaez. What is your opinion about Spanish conquest of America in general? Okay, as a Spaniard, I think the Spanish conquest of America had its pros and cons. What I mean? On the one hand, Spain managed to expand its territory and increase its wealth. On the other hand, the conquest was often cruel and brutal and resulted in exploitation and oppression of Native American people. I believe that history must be viewed objectively and that we must learn from our past mistakes as not repeat them in the future. No more. Okay, Mr. Narvaez, what advice would you give to the explorer and adventurers? I would advise you to be respectful and humble in your exploration. It is important to be mindful of culture and customs of people you encounter along the way and not try to impose your own world view. It's also important to be prepared to face any difficulties and willing to learn from mistakes and difficulties that come along the way. Okay, Mr. Narvaez, this is my last question. How would you describe your legacy and contribution to the history of the exploration and conquest of America? I think my expedition to Florida is an example of the courage and determination of explorers of that time. Although our expedition failed, we were able to reach uncharted territory and do some important explorations. In addition, our experience and failure were used by other Spanish explorers to plan and carry out future exploration. Ultimately, my legacy is part of the history of the conquest of America, and I hope my experience can serve as a lesson for the future explorers. That was great. Thank you, Mr. Narvaez.